Hey everybody, welcome to PCARMARKET Live on the PCARMARKET Live YouTube channel. You're watching Inside the Market, checking out all the Porsche happenings, what sold, what didn't, why. So it may be something you want to check us out every week because we're going to be able to talk about what is happening in the Porsche market, what you're collecting and what you're thinking of buying and why and how, and also some great information. So please subscribe to our YouTube channel. Again, Inside the Market is a segment we do on what I just mentioned, and then we also have some guests sprinkled in as well. Today we have special guests with us. We have Jim Barry, obviously, our very own senior VP, who obviously people have learned his knowledge is invaluable, part of our crew here. And also Kevin Ginsberg. Welcome, Kevin. Kevin, as many of you know, is a dealer, ambassador, automobile. He is also a collector himself, some beautiful stuff. And I'd like to say an auction expert. He's been doing the auction thing for a long time, especially this type of auction, and pretty much knows the ins and outs in presenting cars and maximizing the offerings that he puts on PCAR.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So here, we got a lot of stuff to talk about today. As a matter of fact, we're going to do a little monologue, okay? It's not an act. It's not going to be a no jokes. But what I wanted to do is we're going to be talking about 930 turbos. And all kidding aside, 930 turbos is very confusing to a lot of people. So I wanted to set a little bit of groundwork regarding the make, the models themselves, and really what really the differences are between the early 930 turbos and the newer ones, meaning the the 80s cars. Mm-hmm. So the first thing is this is something that many of you know and some of you don't. The 930 turbo is redundant because 930 means 911 turbo. Mm-hmm. So a lot of times you'll see an ad for the 930 turbo when it really means 911 turbo. So when we say 930, we mean
911 turbo.
911 turbo. And again, a lot of people don't know that. It's just a little bit of information. And the same way that they call, when you get into the later cars, like a 965 is really what the 964 turbos were called, later on. So it's just good internal Porsche information. But one of the things that's interesting is this. From 1975 through 77, the turbo, the 930, the 911 turbo in those years, 75 through 77, used a 3-liter from the Carrera 3-liter car. Hence, the first Porsche turbos called the Turbo Carrera. And they were not intercooled cars. And what's really interesting about that is if you have driven a 75 through 77 non-intercooled turbo with a 3-liter motor, it is quite different than getting pounded by turbo lag and that storm that comes on in the later cars, the 3 liters. And what's kind of interesting for a normal, naturally aspirated guy like me is the power, they lower the compression on the 3-liter off of the Carrera 3-liter motor in the turbo version. So the power almost seems linear. When you drive a 75, 6, and 7, it's a 3-liter, non-intercooled car, and then you put the turbo on it, the turbo lag is so minimal, and the compression was reduced on the 3-liter that the power band is weird because the turbo picks up where the naturally aspirated has been a little bit suppressed. Right. So the delivery of the power on an early turbo is quite interesting, and quite frankly, I like it. I like it. I actually prefer that over the newer ones. Yeah. So I don't want to confuse anyone, but I just really want to just get some of this information. So, and that's all taste, by the way. And then in 1978, the SC comes out. Mm-hmm. And the SC has a 3-liter motor.
That's a normal Carrera.
Okay, that's a normal Carrera. Right. The 78 turbo goes to a 3.3-liter. It was developed for the car, 3.3-liter motor, and for the first time was intercooled. So now you have a 930, 911 turbo, 78, 79, that have intercooled turbos, 3.3-liter motors, a little bit more power, a little bit more punch when that turbo kicks in. The Widowmaker is born, and all that stuff. And what's interesting is this. In 1978, the 3.3-liter motor was developed and actually lasts all the way into and including the 964 turbos. The same
Well, the block is the same. Yeah.
The block, but also if I understand, the same CIS fuel injection system.
Oh, there's a lot. There's a lot.
But you're talking about 78 through 92.
Yeah.
Now, there's obviously developments in power and more,
same displacement motor.
Same displacement motor, but it's the same block. So while they got a lot out of that motor for many, many years. And the reason I share all this is because when we're going to be talking about some cars that sold, and we're going to talk about the values of these cars. And sometimes it's good to know, like, what's the difference between an early turbo 75, 6, and 7 with the later 70s ones, and then going into the 80s. So if I have not totally confused you, let's move on to talking about some of the cars that had sold. Oh, by the way, before I do that, let me just go back to one other thing. One other thing about the turbos I forgot is a lot of people wonder, why was there a 4-speed, right? Like, why did they wait to put till 1989 to put the G50 in the car? Like, why was there a 4-speed? So the engine was capable of using the long gears due to the torque. But because of the torque, the existed 915 transmission that existed at that time was not able to handle it. So they had to use the 4-speed, right? Bolster it up,
G30, right?
Which was the G30, which was able to handle the power, with more of a heavy-duty, construction, until they were able to make that change into the G50 in the 1989. Okay?
Yep.
So now we got a little bit more history there. So with that, we go into the listings of the first one we'll talk about is a black turbo. I'm going to put it up here again. It's a 1986 911 turbo 930 with 6,000 miles. An absolute beautiful car that had sold. If you look at the photos again, I'm not going to chant this again, but photos and words, it's all we have. All we have is photos and words. So whatever you do is learn to use your iPhone and get the best photos, and listen to our editors, listen to our phone guys, our photo guys. We'll walk you through it, send you an email on what to do, but please listen to that because it's so important. And then you'll see the interior photos. I mean, listen, when you get a black with a red interior that's in this type of condition, it just looks so beautiful and it really pops. This particular car did extremely well, and I just want to just share this. It sold on PCARMARKET for $155,000, $160,000 with the fees. And I think how long before that was it on BaT?
It was on BaT, I would say, just a few short weeks prior.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
It wasn't a long time.
All right. So a few weeks before that, it was on BaT. It no-sailed. Okay. Yeah. As a matter of fact, I have the listing here again. The BaT listing, which is, it's nice. Sometimes it's timing. I think the car was presented very well. And so the car eventually sold on PCARMARKET. And Jim, tell us a little bit about that car and how it did as far as numbers.
Well, I think that, on the BaT, it said goodbye at 149.
Right.
So about $6,000 difference. So when you think about it, that made the difference for the seller to pull the trigger. But, it's like you're in that range.
Yeah.
So, and Kevin and I discussed one of these cars a few months ago that was trying to get out of a original owner's hands. So I think in the mid-ones for a single digit is what I call 0 to 10,000 miles car is probably a safe bet, for where the market's at on a car like this. The only way it would really go any higher is if it was maybe a special wishes car, a paid to sample, or if we got into, an area I don't really like too much because you really can't drive them, like a sub 1,000-mile car.
Right.
I mean, maybe that could get a premium, but I think anywhere from that 145 to 165 range, depending on the configuration, is probably where the value lies here. And this proved it because it did that range twice.
Yeah, but how about the seats? I mean, sports seats.
Well, that makes a big difference.
Kevin, what do you think with the equipment that's in this car? Again, sports seats are a big deal, but when you look at the color, the presentation, how much is affected price-wise with sports seats and a color combo like this?
A color combo like this, sports seats, this build, this car, I think you're probably adding at least 15% to the value because it popped. First of all, sports seats in a turbo are the best.
Killer.
Mm-hmm. And black with red, it's my favorite combination on one of these cars. I grew up with an uncle who drove a black with red turbo in the 80s, and so that car pops. And every time we talk about that car, I wish I kept it out of all the cars. Yeah, he had a 993 Turbo S, he'd rather have that car.
You know, it's funny. This car had no excuses.
Yeah.
You know, when you read the thread and you go on, there's really nothing that anyone could say. The car was just well represented. There was no stories. There was no weird history. And I think the car ultimately was well bought, well sold, and move on. All smiles here. Right.
And I think the number is spot on. I mean, I've been doing a lot of work, like Jim said. I'm trying to get a client of mine, original owner, 3,600 mile car, and I keep talking to him over the last year and a half about the market is settling in. It's not.
He's looking to buy one or sell one?
No, it's sell one. Original car, original owner.
Coming soon.
Yeah,
3,600 miles.
I'm working on it, and Jim knows this. We've been talking about it for a long time, and this gentleman has watched the market deteriorate over the last 2 years on that car. I've told him now, I think it's settling in. I think this is where we're kind of, depending on the car, and we're going to talk about the differences between them today. But, you know, like Jim said, a sub 10,000 mile car, I think is a $150,000 car today if it's the right car with the right history and
See,
all
that's
that.
the thing is, for it to reach 150, everything has to be right.
Correct.
Years ago, it wasn't really the case. You know, it's all eyeballs, eye candy.
Right.
But the car, people want to know that when they're spending that kind of money today, they're getting not just a great looking car, but well taken care of. It was loved, it was serviced. The body is what it looks like. So I think
what Kevin said about the seats is huge, because did you ever see what a set of those seats goes for on a site like ours? I mean, it's unbelievable.
Yeah,
and ones that are in this
fortune.
type of condition, you know, there was no bolster wear, there was no re-dye. This is all the way it should be.
You know what I love? Can't you feel those seats by looking at them?
I love them. I love them.
You look at the seats in this car and you know what it feels like to sit in that car.
You do.
It's snug and beautiful and luxurious, sporty. We love this car. We love this car. So we could spend all day talking about
We'd all
this.
put it in our garage.
Yes, we absolutely would. We really would. Now we're going to change hands. We're going to change directions here and go to something similar but different. Here's if I get this right over here. Now we're going to show you a 1987 911 Turbo 930. That is a little different. This is a high mileage car, 100,000 mile car. Nice presentation by the seller's mechanic. We remember this car because, you know, the pictures, if you go through them here, they were nice, right? It was very nice. There was minimal shadows on it, nice pictures of the motor, the receipts, nice interior shots, detail. They showed any kind of issues, close-ups, really nice beauty shots. So the presentation was really nice. But what's really important about this car was that the seller's mechanic was there to answer questions, you know, and really represent the car well. And this car, although it had 100,000 miles, Jim, was a pretty nice car.
Yeah, motor was done, I think, within 5,000 miles of the car being sold.
Big deal.
Yeah, that's a big deal. So what somebody has here is a nice driver, and you know it's cosmetically it was a 95,000 mile car, right? But it was a nice 95,000 mile car, 100,000 mile car. But with the motor done, what do you got to do? You put the key in, you drive it, and that just really shows both ends of the market here. Because these cars, the 86 and 87, are almost identical car. You know, to my knowledge, there's not really any difference. So that's really a good, you know, analysis. And then whatever the folks that are listening to this are trying to buy, you go in between those numbers and rate the car you're looking at.
Yeah, so $72,000 with fee, $75,000 car, engine rebuild.
Yeah.
Get in, turn the key, and enjoy the car. I mean, I think, again, on the other side of very different but the same, Kevin, is you got a nice car to drive. You don't have to worry about doing any major engine work on the vehicle. You're bidding on a car like this. I think, again, the price nailed it.
I do, too. There's one important factor with this car, though. One owner. This is a one-owner, 100,000 mile car, one owner that has been maintained pretty much by the same guy, and you know the history of the car. So, yeah, if you're not looking for that show car and you really want a turbo and you want to enjoy it, the numbers are affordable in comparison, but this car had a lot of great things going for it. The engine rebuild and one owner.
Yeah,
it's a big deal.
That's a big deal.
No, absolutely. And you know what? Forgive me for not mentioning the one owner. Thanks for picking that up. That's a big deal. So here you have a car that is cosmetically looking a little patinaed and used the way it should. Yeah. 100,000 miles, engine rebuild, and one owner, mechanic representing the car. I'm in.
Yeah,
I'm in.
I agree.
All indications bid are a bid on that car. So again, there's a great comparison between two beautiful 930, 911 turbos. And good. Any other comments with that car?
No, I think that really sums it up. I mean, that's probably the epitome of like the best driver you can get.
Yep.
You know, because you're not gonna have any guilt about putting miles on that car. You know, it's pretty sorted and it's got a good history, so you just enjoy it. The other car, if you're trying to build a world-class collection, you go that way.
Yeah, that's a very good point.
Yeah.
Because, I'm from that world of the perfect cars and little museum setting, and now I've transitioned. Maybe it's because I'm getting older, that my daily driver now is I'm kind of really starting to appreciate these cars.
Yeah.
The ones that were maintained well, that had some serious mechanical work already done to them, and I could just drive it, enjoy it. The other day I was at my house and I was blowing up a raft for my son. My wife was in the garage, and I actually put it was two rafts. Not rafts, it was actually a bed for a sleeping bag, but a raft.
Yeah.
And I actually took it, I blew one up and I put it on top of the car. And my wife, she's like, "What's wrong with you? You're putting it on your car." And I was like, "It's okay." And I was like, what a great feeling
Different
it was.
feeling.
And they all looked at me and my son, his friend, and my wife like I lost my mind. So they're trained very well. That's number one.
That's a good thing.
They're trained very well. But I actually, it's very freeing to be able to do that,
100%.
You'll get that when you get your M3 on the road.
No, you're 100% right, because, we can have these show cars and they're pretty to look at, but we're missing the enjoyment of driving the car because we're afraid.
We are.
I know.
We are losing
I'm the same
that
way you are.
enjoyment.
Yeah.
Same way.
I'm changing my ways.
Yeah.
I'm changing my ways. I want to just drive, man. If you know what? We love it. We have somebody that won a car the other day, and he'll rename nameless. He'll rename nameless here because he's well known. And he bought two cars from us, and he said, I like buying old cars that are new because I want to buy a new car that's 20 years old and then drive it.
Yeah, he feels like the original owner. He's not buying it to preserve it.
Yeah, he'll buy a 15-year-old car with 1,000 miles on it and drive it like he just bought it out of the showroom to drive as a daily driver. I mean, there are all
I
types.
learned that. I never knew people did that because I always thought everyone was buying cars like for the reason I would buy them. And in being a dealer, I noticed that. I'm like, why are you taking this 5,000-mile, 10-year-old car and driving it? But the guy's like, because I don't want to buy an 06 that's, worn to hell. I just want a nice car. I'm going to take care of it, and I don't like the new one.
That's exactly what happened with the 997 cab I sold last week.
Oh,
on
PCARMARKET. That was a nice car.
Yeah.
3,700 mile car, one owner car, red
Was it
Carrera
06? 07?
cab.
That was
07.
a beautiful car.
Beautiful car. Not a flaw on the car. The guy is in North Carolina who bought it, or South Carolina who bought it. Super nice guy. Exactly that. Says to me, I said, we're having a nice conversation and real easy to deal with, and just fell in love with the car. He said, I love a 997. He goes, and I don't need all the fancy options.
But he wanted to drive it.
He said, I want a new 997.
Yeah.
He said, so where do I go to if I find a 3,700 mile car? Now I'm going to drive it every day.
Wow. You know what? I thought I knew everything. I mean, not that I thought I knew it. I thought I knew all the markets that we had in this world. There is a market for people that want new, older cars to drive, not just collectors. And wow,
he's not a collector.
No.
He just wants a new old 997.
That is fantastic. By the way, if that's you, send us a message. Make a comment here on our channel. I'd love to hear from people that do that.
Yeah.
I really would. If you're the kind of person that wants to buy a very low mileage car because you want it to be as new as possible, even though it's 20 years old, but your plan is to drive it, we want to hear from you because we're going to do a segment and we're going to feature some of those.
Yeah.
I think that's very cool. So there's that car. And now we're going to bounce to another 911 Turbo, which is one that sold here on PCAR, which was a Petrol blue 79, okay, the 79 3.3 liter intercooled motor. Jim, I want you to describe this car, but in a nutshell, the color to me just kind of grabbed me. But tell us about this car.
Yeah, the color made this car fit a lot of different bills, because some cars are bought to drive, some are bought to restore, some are bought to collect. You could do anything with this car. I will say this car is probably sold and used as intended. It had 185,000 miles without even having an engine rebuild. So that shows that somebody stayed on top of it. And I remember I dealt with the seller briefly, and he said that. He says, he goes, you do your valve adjustments, you drive the car, you service it, you shouldn't have to keep rebuilding the motor. And I'm like, try telling that to the people in the comments, but
right.
Valid point. So,
this is where Tom Papadopoulos would come in good. He's all about these cars.
Yeah, and you know
keep
what?
Keep them maintained, but drive them.
20-something-year-old paint job, looked average for what you'd expect. Seats are redone, carpets weren't. It ran good. So you could take this car, you could turn it into something unbelievable. You could keep it the way it is. You could do some light mechanical stuff and just keep driving it. There's a lot of possibilities with this car, but having that color on the birth certificate,
right?
Yeah,
I think leads it to you could drive it, and if they ever went up again, you could restore this car. And now you have like a top tier car.
I agree.
That's kind of the way I look at it.
Colorless
and when you look at this, you have again the presentation. The photos were okay. I don't think the photos served this seller well. I'll be honest with you. I think that the photos could have been better. A lot of shadows. I think that the Petrol Blue can even when it's a 30-footer, you can really present the car nicely. And I think we fell a little bit short here. For those that are watching, take a look at this and you'll see, because that means money. That's money. But like we had said before, is when you look at the car's in need all the way around. It's in need all the way around, and you have a couple of choices when you buy a car like this. Just you keep driving it till it needs something major. You buy it to do a restoration, or you do an engine rebuild and some major components so you know you're going to be safe and reliable, and you drive the car with minimal investment. There's just so many things you could do, and that's what's beautiful about Porsche. There's not many cars in the world that you could do that, put that money in it, and always leave money aside to do something bigger and better in the future. Or not.
The exciting thing about this car is I think we're going to maybe get to see the rest of the story, because I don't know the person who wanted it, but I recognize the name. And I know they sold a 928 with us that they bought on BaT like a year before, and the guy, he sorted out the car. It was a beautiful 928. Like he didn't cheap out.
Okay.
So I have a feeling, knowing what he does, because I watch what he bids on and stuff, and I have a feeling something special is going to happen.
He's going to bring this car to the next level.
He probably will. He's that type of
reintroduce
guy.
it to the market.
Or enjoy it, but we're watching you. We watch what you do, even though you don't know.
Great color.
But that's very interesting. You know his other car.
He's in California, because I recognize the name. You could look at the name who won it. It's a memorable name, and I recognize the name when it comes on, and I feel like I should just like reach out and talk to him, because he does cool stuff.
Yeah, and let me just say is we love the community. We really do. I mean, Jim will tell you, the people we meet, the conversations we have in the Porsche world when people buy cars, we care. Like, we care what you do with it afterwards. Send us photos. Let us know what's happening with the car. Obviously, we're a little Porsche crazy, and you can help feed our addiction by sending us some stuff. And as time goes on, we've been around for a little bit right now, and we've sold a lot of cars. We're going to have kind of like get-togethers in different parts of the country with people from PCAR who have PCARs can come join us and maybe celebrate a little bit and get to know each other as we find the ability to travel again. I'm going to move on to the next car now for the sake of time here. It's also another 930 turbo, a 911 turbo 930. It's a 45,000 mile car. This is on BaT. Okay, this car sold on BaT. Now, Jim, we talked about this car briefly. It was a 78. The car sold for $86,000. Nice presentation. Killer. I'm putting it up here on the screen. Color combo. I mean, I'm not a big Reds fan, but you look at red with that interior. What's that called? Brown? What brown? Dark brown leather. Those sport seats. Here we go again, Kevin. Look at those seats. I'm telling you, I feel them. When I look at seats like that, I want to be in that car. And when you can invite someone into a car when it comes to bidding time, what a great presentation. Some of it's the cars. The cars is beautiful, and other times it's the photos that do it. So nicely presented, beautiful car, and it obviously did well. Paint to sample, sienna red was changed to regular red, or maybe God's red.
Yeah.
And big deal, fresh engine rebuild, new clutch, etc. So $86,500, 78 930, new engine, an engine rebuild, new clutch, a really special paint to sample color, even though it was changed, sport seats, and an incredible combination. There you go. Value-wise on that, what's your thoughts?
I think it's well bought. The color change is the one thing, but again, it's a 45,000 mile car. It's not a 6,000 mile car. So this is a car that should be driven a little bit.
Yeah.
Talking about the sports seats, especially on the earlier cars. You talk about the standard seat on an earlier turbo versus the sports seats, it makes the car feel like a totally different car. I mean, I agree with them on the later car too, but the color combination is great. The car clearly had good maintenance. The rebuild gives somebody peace of mind. I think the car was well bought. I think, a sub 100,000 mile turbo that needs nothing, that isn't a 100,000 mile car. It's a 45,000 mile car. I think it did great.
Yeah, and like James, you said before, is that on the title it says Sienna Red. And that's a paint to sample, and that's a big deal.
Yeah, exactly. So if someone was going to put it back to that color, it would probably add value to the car. I think that's why it was well bought. So as a driver, great. You know what I mean? But I think if that was the original color, that car probably might have touched 100,000. You know what I mean? And I had less mileage, it would have exceeded 100,000.
Yeah, and I can't picture Sienna Red. I'm going to research it and pop it up when this goes live, so you'll see what the original color would have looked like.
Yeah, there was an SC recently somewhere that I remember in that
Sounds
color.
like, what is it, a little richer red?
I would call it like the predecessor to Arena Red.
Yeah.
And if I'm wrong on that, then
more burgundy-ish.
put an X over my face when you
Yeah.
But it would be the inspiration for the Arena Red.
I know I got a sound effect here somewhere when you're wrong.
Yeah.
No, that's not it.
Yeah.
Well, either way, we'll figure it out.
When I'm wrong, it is funny. Usually.
But it is funny. But so there you go. So that is another turbo. There's 4 turbos, that really can give you a good picture of the market, conditions, some of the things to do. We know now. At the beginning of this show, we talked about the motors and some of the differences between them. And I think we'll leave it there.
That's why I see value in this. Because if you were just looking at these 4 things on your internet, you'd be like, what? You'd be pulling your hair out. Right.
Yeah.
We just gave a little clarity on it, and I think that's the value of what we're doing here.
Tremendous.
And I think what you're noticing, too, if you looked at this market 2 years ago or a year and a half ago, you couldn't touch a 45,000 mile car for under $100,000.
Right.
By the way, I don't think this car is going much lower than where it is now. I think the market is starting to stabilize with what the correct mileage and condition cars are. And I think this is a great example of 5 different turbos that show the range of the market and what you can actually buy.
Yeah.
And you can get in a good turbo now at a sub 100 number and feel good about it, because I don't think you're going to lose a lot.
Yeah, the world has changed for the better for a lot of people that are able to get into these really cool cars. And, it's we're excited about it. Every time we see a nice 930, turbo, submitted, we're excited about it because they're special cars. I think it's a perfect segue, because the question from Adam, which we always add at least one question when we have time here, is from Tucson, Arizona, is what's the value proposition, the value gap between when a car has high mileage but had an engine rebuild? Like, what really is the impact price-wise? And I have to tell you, of all the questions, we picked that one because we think it's really appropriate here. And I'll kind of make one comment and pass it over to you guys, is it's like anything else. It's one of the things you can't fix is really bad body work, right?
Yep.
We know that. If a car's twisted and messed and has just been, it's got bad bones, that's a problem. But an engine can always be rebuilt, so that's something to always keep in the back of your mind. You can always, do something to the mechanics of the car, replace something or modify it. But when you buy a car that's been well kept, it's reasonable, the body panels are original, even if they're not, but it's a nice car, it's a nice straight car. When you see that the engine, and you get receipts, you don't just hear the word engine rebuild, but if you can substantiate that the engine has been rebuilt, the clutch and some other things, that's a major difference. And you know what? No more than we have a bunch of 993s that we've sold, Jim, right? And what a disparity between a car that when somebody says it had an engine rebuild and they substantiate it with receipts, wow, do we see a difference in the price of the car. Yeah. So people generally recognize that, but on a 930, 993s and all these air-cooled cars, man, oh man, when you see that just should give you so much confidence, right?
Absolutely, 100%. I mean, there's a lot of things you could do to a car that you're not going to get your money back.
Yes.
Like painting this Sienna red car guards red. I mean, that was money thrown in the garbage pail, pretty much.
Yeah.
But when you rebuild an engine with receipts from a qualified place,
Sure, of course.
And other value-added things you can do, you're always going to get, you're just going to get that confidence from the bidders, because quite frankly, a lot of these people just want to buy a car and drive it and enjoy it. They don't want to go through the trouble. So they're like, oh, this is done, and it's worth more to them. There's value in that.
And the confidence is the key word. It creates confidence in the car. So as soon as you create confidence in the car, you'll get people to pay more. By the way, is it going to bring it up to the value of a 6,000-mile show car? No.
Yeah.
But it's going to create a desire to have that car because there's confidence and security, knowing that you're going to be able to buy it and drive it and use it, and not worry about spending the money on what's next.
Yeah.
And I think that, it has substantial value to it. What's that dollar amount? It's hard to say based on the individual car, but it's certainly substantially more than a car that needs a full engine rebuild.
Yeah, no doubt. I always remember watching What's My Car Worth with
what's his name?
Steve Martin.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
From Sports Car Market.
Yeah.
And he always, every time he would do a test drive on the car, he would actually check the radio out and check different things and the knobs and defroster. And every time the things worked right, he would always say that if someone took the time to make sure that every component on the dashboard works and the lights work, usually that means it was a well-kept car, well taken care of. And that's just another side note here that I could not be. When you see cars that have all these things, because in the write-ups you see all electronics work as they should, don't bypass that. Don't blow that off. It's not a big deal. But when you look at a car that's 30, 40 years old and everything works as it should, that means that the person really cared for the car and they took the time to make it right. Even, I'll give you a perfect example, not to toot my own horn, but on that car, my daily driver, I made sure that the interior lights, the switches above the doors, on, off, when the doors open, they go on. Yeah. I made sure those work. Do I really need that? No. I made sure that every single thing in that car works because it's important to me to know that they work. When I sell that car, that's going to be a value proposition for somebody buying it, and hopefully it'll repay me by making sure that stuff is right. So there's a couple of messages there. Number one is, look, when you read these write-ups, look at what was done to the car. Take it to heart because it is important to the value. If you have a car, make sure you go through these little things at your mechanic because sometimes it's a matter of a bulb. Sometimes they could check, how easy it is to check the wiring.
It could be a fuse, it could be
anything. You can get things working on the car. And so before you put them up for auction, make sure that you go through the car and make sure they work. The same way when you do the photos, you look at them, you're ready to laugh.
No, because all I can think about is that defroster video. So how do I see if it works? I still can't turn the defroster on in an SC.
So
I think maybe by the time I retire, I'll learn how to do it. Yeah. I don't know how to do it.
I'm gonna put that video up because
it's the funniest thing because it's so true.
Yeah. It's how do you?
What is this?
I have no idea.
Yeah, their controls. There's nothing clear about those controls.
Yeah. Did you see that video we're talking about?
Yeah.
Did you?
Yeah, I did.
It's so funny. It's so ridiculous. It's time to put on the heat. So let's put the heat on. This thing doesn't. Okay, there you go. That's the heat, or is? Oh, there you go. That's it. That's the heat. No. Wait a minute. I was looking at that. I was looking online, and I think the guy said you got to press this and put this over here, and then back here. That's the heat right there. All right, that's the heat, or is that the defroster, or is that the radio? Listen, the Porsche does amazing things and a lot of things right, but boy, oh boy, Rich will be the first one. We look at each other like, because we do a lot of work here. We build a lot of different cars, and we look at this and go, what the hell? What were they thinking?
It's crazy.
Yeah, it's crazy.
It definitely makes me feel like it was an afterthought to put any of that in the car.
Yeah. Well, listen, we were talking about this the other day. He has a 550, what is it? What's your Big Benz?
Oh, the S420.
The S4.
Oh, the S55.
No, the big four-door, that black one.
The black one, that's an S420.
An S4.
W140.
W140, Benz people. That car is the most luxurious car in its day. Yeah. It's and there's no cup holder. I remember how crazy back then when everyone knew that there was no cup holder on these giant Mercedes, but in today looking back at that, it's even more unbelievable. You got everything. The back seats recline.
And what's nice about the Porsche, we found a place to put it in that car. I don't know where the heck to put one.
Well, I'll tell you a quick story.
I don't know where to put one. It's going to look
right. So listen, thank you so much. I think it's a good place to end it. Kevin, thank you.
My pleasure.
Again for taking the trip out here. I know, and thank you, Jim. I know Kevin was attacked by a dog.
Yep.
What kind of dog?
Rottweiler, male Rottweiler.
He was attacked by a Rottweiler, and we saw the photos.
And I'm a Rottweiler lover, so just
he's a
people,
dog
and
lover.
An owner. And an owner.
And an owner. No, we're all dog lovers here. We have dogs, but we saw your face.
Yeah, 65 stitches.
65 stitches. Yeah. Oh, my goodness.
But 5 weeks later, here I am, and I think I look I look all right.
You know what? You
I look better.
You look good for you.
Thank you. That's what I was looking for.
You set that one right up for me. But I'm glad you're feeling better.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for taking the trip here. We
My
really
pleasure.
appreciate it.
Always
Jim, thank you.
Thanks, Kevin.
And on the board, John. Thanks, John, for all of your great work with the cameras. Thank you all for watching P-Car Market. Remember, P-Car Market has now expanded to all makes and models. Get your cars in. Mercedes, BMWs, Audis. We know that our Porsche collectors and our Porsche friends have garages with other cars, and they wanted to be able to sell them on P-Car Market. So now you're able to do that. So consign your car today. And thank you for watching P-Car Market Live inside the market. Thank you.